I want to pause for a moment to demonstrate to you another instance of bad doctrine that has invaded Christianity in general and how it played out in actual history regarding these various biblical prophecies about Israel. Most of these prophetic actions, the part that involved blessings, were misappropriated by church institutions and taken away from Israel. Here's a quote from Keel and Delitzsch made in the middle part of the 1800s concerning Israel's land and how this prophesied fulfillment would occur that is quite different from what the Bible literally and clearly says. Here is what to know. First, this was written long before Israel returned as a nation in 1948. Centuries ago, the church had abandoned God's word concerning any thought that Israel would ever physically return to their former homeland. So directly as concerning Zephaniah 2, verses 8, 9, and 10, we read this from Keel and Delitzsch's commentary. Judah is not to enter such possession of Ammon and Moab till the Lord turns the captivity of Judah. That is to say, not immediately to return from the Babylonish captivity, but when the dispersion of Israel among the Gentiles, which lasts till this day, shall come to an end. And Israel, through its conversion to Christ, will be finally reinstated in the privileges of the people of God. It follows from this that the fulfillment is still in the future and that it will be accomplished not literally, but spiritually. So despite all that's happened since then, and since Israel did return as a nation of Jews that certainly had yet to turn to Yeshua, and this happened nearly 80 years ago, nonetheless, what we read here continues to represent the false beliefs and doctrines of the bulk of the modern 21st century church. Everything involving Israel for now and in the future is spiritualized away. And whatever part of it's good and profitable is taken over by the Gentile church, Jews excluded. See, this is why we all need to turn our backs on false doctrines. The false doctrines of humans, some of the institutions that created these doctrines, which base their faith and beliefs on them, and instead return to the Holy Scriptures. See, otherwise we put ourselves in direct confrontation with God no matter what we claim. God's word never fails. When we attempt to veer off and go our own way, sometimes the result of impatience, other times wanting to create our own favorable religion, the result's heresy and rebellion. Therefore, believe what we're learning here. Your lives, physical and eternal, just might depend upon it. Zephaniah 2:11. Yehovah will be fearsome against them, for he will make all the earth's gods waste away. Then all the coasts and islands of the nations will worship him, each from its place. Now, some scholars see this verse as but a continuation of the three previous ones concerning Moab and Ammon. I don't. Clearly, the words themselves explain that God is addressing the world universally. The only part that might arguably refer directly to Ammon and Moab are the beginning ones that say, Yehovah will be fearsome against them, or better translated, fearsome over them. So the words that come next, for he will make all the earth's gods, certainly includes Ammon and Moab's gods, but it is now extending the scope to our entire planet. All nations, all gods. Now, there's some awkward wording in this verse. And remember now, we're dealing with poetic elements that tend to do that in order to make the author's thought work within the structure of Hebrew poetry. And that can be quite complex and vary from writer to writer. The Hebrew word that the complete Jewish Bible is translating to fearsome, and the majority of Bible translations make it terrible, is yareh. You know, I understand why different translators might pick different words, because this word in Hebrew includes this mix of ideas of awe-inspiring, awful, terrible, fearful, even reverence, and it would be too much to write all these various words down. Nonetheless, as a matter of studying the passage, this mix is how we're to understand it. What is reverence to some can be fearsome to others. What some welcome, Israel for the most part, will be terrible for others, mostly the Gentile nations. By making all the earth's gods waste away, it carries the sense of God taking away the lands over which the other gods have laid claim and over which they have dominion. If that happened, these people's gods would starve to death, waste away, because according to their god systems, these gods need to be regularly fed by their followers. In fact, the King James Version and others, the word we find is famish. God is therefore constricting and restricting their control, at least partly by starving them. However, it is that we might think about these false gods, whether they're non-existent or as spiritual beings that have urged humans to accept them as gods. Their judgment day has come. These gods will be revealed for what they are, false and impotent. Well, when the people of Ammon and Moab, and then for all the nations of the earth, realize they have placed their faith and hopes on nonsense, then they will turn to Yahweh. They will finally get it. There is no other legitimate God, the Creator, the ruler of the earth and the universe, to serve than Him. We're told that all the coasts and islands of the nations, Gentile nations, will worship Him. Now, the phrase islands of the nations is a pretty standard one. It simply means the very far-flung and remote places. That is, far-flung from Israel's perspective. Places that may not even have been known in that era, but were thought to probably exist there. This had to have been a startling statement for all those Israelites that heard it from Zephaniah, because to their way of thinking, true worship could only occur in Jerusalem. The reality of the entire world worshiping Yahweh was also reflected in the writings of the prophet Malachi.
For more teachings of real Bible study and to rediscover God's Word with Tom Bradford, visit Torah Class today on the web, streaming TV, or download the Torah Class mobile app.